For someone that's listening right now that's just like, Julie, I'm completely lost. I have no idea what my purpose is. What's one piece of advice you can give to them?
Okay. That's what I do, a lot of exercises for that in What's Your What. So one of the things you can do is get all the cards, yearbooks, emails, things you've gotten where people acknowledge you, and write a list of all the adjectives that have ever been used to describe you.
Yeah.
You're going to see the same words come up over and over again, or synonyms. That's a clue. When there's an activity that creates a flow state for you, notice the quality that you feel while you're doing it. Like I had a client once, and she loved basketball. Growing up in her young adult years, basketball was her thing. But she was an older woman now, and she was like, I'm not playing basketball, and I feel like there's no joy in my life. And so I asked her, what's the quality? I call it quality of God. You can call it qualities of nature that you felt when you were playing basketball. Qualities of God, of life, are love, peace, joy, harmony, bliss, ecstasy, freedom, justice, integrity, truth. So you find out what are the qualities, and then ask yourself, what activities, what things can I do or surround myself with that ignite those qualities? That will help you find your passion. Light up your environment with the qualities that light you up.
What's up, everyone? You are listening to Wake Up Naked. I am your host, Esmey Leon. We're going in deep into ourselves. We're going to be talking about ideas and concepts and things that have the potential to actually change our lives. So get excited, get ready, and what are you waiting for? Come over here and get naked with me. Hi team, my name is Esmey Leon and you are at the Wake Up Naked podcast. And I am here with one of my favorite speakers at Agape International Spiritual Center, but she's so much more than that. Julie Moret. Yes. You are an inspirational speaker and a personal coach, yes, and also the author of What's Your What? Yeah. How to Ignite
Your Unique Brand.
There we go. How to Ignite Your Unique Brand. As I mentioned, I first saw you at Agape and I instantly fell in love with your soul. Obviously, you have a beautiful outside, but I think it's a reflection of your inside. And when I saw you speak at Agape, you were wearing these bright pink stilettos.
Oh my gosh.
And I loved it. I was like, that's a badass chick. And whatever she has to say, wow, I want to listen. And I think what stood out to me was you owned who you were. And that's a beautiful thing. Have you always been that way?
No. No. Big fat no. No, it's been a process. And I've taken some time lately to reflect on how I got where I am, because I'm really coming into my own. I'm not done. It'll be forever, but it feels really good in my skin. I feel really good in my skin right now. And one of the things that I realized I did was I had to look at where I'm blocking the flow of energy in my life. So when we grow up, there are different defense mechanisms that we all have. The main ones in psychology, it's fight, flight, freeze, or appease. And so I started looking, and anybody that's listening to this, you can kind of check in and see, like, what are your main ones? Because they get enculturated, they get ingrained in us early on in life, whether it's from family or culture, society, gender. We get taught how to defend against tough things. And so what I realized after a while is there are ways that I was blocking the flow of energy, which means the flow of passion, which means the flow of fire, which means the flow of aliveness. And so I started acknowledging that. I started saying, oh, look at that. I'm appeasing in this situation. My husband and I are really sweet people. So we would just appease the hell out of each other. And just because we didn't want to make a wave, we didn't want to, make disruptions. And so as I started evolving, that was one of the big first steps. I had to say, you know what, I'm going to be doing a new thing now. It might be awkward at first, but I need to be more honest. I need to say what I feel. And I think that step of starting to acknowledge what I really feel and not defending the way I always used to is what allowed a flow state. I heard you speaking about a flow state recently in one of your podcasts. It allowed more flow in my energy, and that gave me access to my life force. And that's what lets me just be on fire in my life.
Yeah. And in your talks too, I know that you did a TED Talk. And one of the things that stood out to me was, you were a big supporter, not strong enough of a word, but encourager of being your unique self.
Yeah.
Where does that come from, and how can you, and I'm sure this in your book, how do you encourage people to come into their uniqueness?
Yeah, that's been a big thrust in my whole life because I was the opposite of that. I kept doing what I was talking about with those defense mechanisms. I would numb out if things were uncomfortable, or I'd do flight, I'd leave, or I would freeze up, or whatever it was. And I think what was important to me, a key in becoming my whole self, was figuring out, who am I? And beginning to believe that I'm actually here on purpose, that we are all here on purpose with a purpose. And once I started to get a sense of what my purpose is, then it's no longer about me. Then all of a sudden it's about, I'm here to serve. So that's changed everything. Like, I was just out of town for a speaking event, and I arrived at my hotel night before, and I had been through a lot in the week beforehand, and my mind was kind of off. And I tried going through my talk, and I kept going blank. Like, could not think of a thing. And I'm going to be on stage in front of hundreds of people, thousands streaming the next day, and I couldn't think of anything. And so I finally went to sleep because it wasn't working. And I woke up the next morning, and I remembered I have a purpose. My purpose is to be, that something happens during this talk, that it's more than a talk, that there's something that activates, there's something that inspires and awakens. So I'm here to serve. So if it means I get up there and I fall on my butt, if it means that I can't think of any words, but I'm used, like, use me, God, source, nature, whatever, use me, and something gets transformed, then it will have been on purpose. And getting on purpose has changed everything. So now it's not all about me anymore. It's about me serving whatever wants to move through, whether you call it God or nature or higher consciousness, whatever my purpose is.
Yeah. Do you feel there ever was a time where you felt like you didn't have a purpose?
Yes. Yeah, that's why I wrote What's Your What, because I didn't know what my what was. What's Your What is a body I took like 5 years to research. How do we find out what our thing is? And one little tip, that people can look at right now is, what are the qualities, the main qualities that charge you, that jazz you? Because that will be a clue about what your purpose is. Like, I grew up, I didn't have a whole lot of education about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but for some reason, as a kid, I used to sleep with a picture of his face under my pillow. Because there's something,
No way.
Totally. I was very curious to my mom. But there was something about freedom that just makes me crazy. It wakes me up. It sets me on fire. It's about finding my own freedom. It's about being free in my own life and helping other people know real freedom in their life. That's what I love so much about Michael Beckwith. He is a free human being on that stage, and he's role modeling it for millions of people around the world. So when we find, and I would invite whoever's listening, like, what are the key qualities? Because they've usually been constant throughout your life. What are the key qualities that really wake you up? And another thing you could do is go through like cards you've received, yearbooks, and write down all the adjectives people have used to describe you. And you'll usually find out there's certain key words or phrases that get repeated over and over and over again. And those give you like a clue about what your thing is. So I wrote What's Your What. Really, it wasn't meant to be a book at first. It was meant to help me figure out what is my purpose. And through the course of writing it and doing the exercises, I realized what my thing is. And then what I got on board with it, and I realized, like I said a minute ago, it's not about my ego. It's about, I'm here to serve a purpose. There's kind of a relief that comes with that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to do anything, just be surrendered to it.
Yeah. So what did you discover was your thing?
So what I discovered, and I actually had a friend that helped me figure it out. I had been at the side of very famous people many times, and I always thought I was going to end up being like, the sidekick. like always the bridemaid, never the bride. And I didn't understand why I was always in that position. And then a few years back, I got a phone call from an artist friend of mine. We had been friends many, many years ago, and he was successful then, but we'd lost touch. And but I had kept up to speed with what he was up to because he's on the news all the time or in magazines, or he's become quite successful. And he called me up and he said, I just wanted to thank you. And I was like, for what? And he said, you were my muse. And I didn't quite get that. And I was a little offended because I didn't really know what that meant. And we got off the phone and I realized muse means source of inspiration. And so I started to own that. And this is the beautiful little addition to that story, is that I was telling a girlfriend of mine about that. And she said, oh, well, if you were his muse and he's so rich and successful, he owes you a paycheck, he owes you some money. And when she said that, it woke something up inside of me. And I ran into my storage unit, opened up this box that I'd been keeping for years and years and years. And the nature of our friendship, he lived in Paris, I lived in New York, and we were pen pals. I would write to him. I would write long letters about like life and the meaning of life, and he would send me back one of his pieces of art, his canvases, with an inscribed poem to me. And at the time, he said, take good care of these. They're going to be worth a lot of money. So I went through and looked at them. I sent them to a dealer in New York because I didn't have a good space to hold them in. She now has them in her studio, and it's worth a fortune.
Wow.
So the point is, what we are built for, our purpose, will supply us. It will take care of us. I'm not going to go sell them, but it just shows like when you're on your purpose, you're acknowledged. I didn't know I was being acknowledged. I didn't even know I was doing my purpose. And now there's a kind of mastery that comes in when I start to own what I am. That makes me get on stage and feel like I know why I'm here. I would imagine you feel that way when you do competitions or when you get into the gym. Like you're the shit, and you know it, right? Right?
Well, no, it definitely is. Yeah, in that sense where you feel on top of the world, and it's very special because it's just a workout. Right. To the naked eye. But I literally touch heaven. Yes. Hardcore. Yes. Every time my workout, that. It's just like you fly away and I'm in a whole nother world, a whole nother dimension. And like, it's a beautiful thing. And it's funny because I want to see if you've ever done this, because I almost discredited that. Like it's not a big deal. And I was like, how many people have the opportunity to every single day tap into heaven for an hour or two where they know it's going to happen? Does that?
100%. What happened for me is I kept thinking, oh, well, I have this book that I want to write, but everybody's got a book, so why write it? Or, I'm a speaker, but there's so many speakers. And it took a while. And especially I got a lot of really nice feedback from people. So I started getting that reinforcement of like, no, this is your thing. Yes, there are other authors and there are other speakers, and you've got a niche. Like you have a place, and it was earmarked for you. All of us have our place that's earmarked for us. And I think when I started appreciating it and taking ownership of it and like a responsibility to serve it, that's when I'm starting to take flight more and more.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I can totally relate in the sense of like, in fitness, how many ways can you teach to do a squat? Right? Because like a squat's a squat, a lunge is a lunge. And so I felt that same way with making videos and things that I do, but no one does it like you. Right. No one does it just like you. So in that same way, I want to acknowledge you because no one speaks quite like you. And I'm telling you, from the first time I heard you speak, there was something where my soul connected to you. And I had the biggest girl crush, and still do, biggest girl crush on you. And there was just in your presence and your message all connected for me. And I instantly fell in love. So you are definitely born to do what you're doing. And I know that you know that, but I just wanted to say it out loud.
It's nice to hear. It feels good,
Yeah. And so did little 5-year-old Julie know this was what she was going to be doing? No. Did she want to do that?
No, not at all. Little 5-year-old Julie was just honestly kind of hurt and broken. Like little 5-year-old Julie didn't have a clue that any of this was possible. When I was 5, what my piece was is I I astral traveled. I didn't know that that's what I was doing at the time, but I remember like I couldn't wait for bedtime. I would run down the hall. As soon as I got into bed, I was up and out. And I could remember like flying over my house and my neighborhood. And this may sound wacky to anybody listening, but it was a time in my life that really let me know there's a whole other thing going on, you know?
Now, for someone that's not familiar with that, what does that mean?
Astral travel. It's basically when your spirit, your soul rises up out of your body and kind of like I'm still connected to my physical body, but I had the experience of being way up high and I could look down and I could see my physical body. And it gave me an awareness that there's more to this world than meets the eye. And what's kind of been sweet is I used to keep my life very compartmentalized, and I would never share something like that unless I was with a group of people that I know totally understood it. But as I've gotten more comfortable in my own skin, I'll bring up my experiences more, and it amazes me how many people will say, "Oh, well, I had this experience once," you know, and everybody's got like their experience. Like I remember my grandpa, and he was like as conservative and straight-laced and, you know, as it comes. And I remember talking to him one time about my journey, and he shared with me that when his sister passed, they were at the graveside, and he felt somebody comforting him, putting their hand on his shoulder, and he knew that it was one of our relatives, and it was really nice. And then he looked around, and there was nobody there, and he said, "I'll never forget it because somebody touched me on the shoulder, and there was no person around." And so I think we all have these moments where we have a hint or a glimmer that there's more than meets the eye. And so 5-year-old Julie was really learning about a whole other thing, a kind of freedom in a different way, you know, of flight in a whole different way. And I was so shy. The idea of going on a stage in front of thousands and thousands of people, no.
That's so fun. And it's so, but it goes to show how you can't really judge someone by their cover or, you know, or a book by its cover, because I would have never thought that you had that you were shy growing up, because I've seen the first time I saw you was on stage and you were speaking and your confidence exuded, you know, so it's always interesting to dig deeper.
Yeah. Super shy. Still kind of am. I tend more towards being introverted, but I guess I've learned how to be an introvert in an extroverted life.
Yeah.
A little bit more.
Do you think it's important to have both?
Well, I think we are either one primarily. I think we come in and that's just our nature. And hopefully we learn how to navigate both worlds so that we're more comfortable. I used to really, if I was out in the world a lot, I do a lot of book signings, and that's a lot of interaction with people. And afterwards I know about myself, I need to kind of go underground for a little while. I need to like just take some time to myself and cave up a little bit. So, but I'm more and more out in the world, and I don't need as much cave time. So I guess something's happening. I'm kind of growing.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
You had mentioned that little 5-year-old Julie was broken. What was happening?
Do you know what? Like, there were things that just didn't resonate. Like, I grew up in the South, and everybody smiles, and they're all so sweet. But I'm somebody that's empathic, and I feel everything. I tend to know things. I tend to be super psychic. And if somebody's smiling at me and they have other thoughts going on, I felt it. So even if there wasn't a big, deep, dark thing happening, it was just the disconnect of me feeling stuff and not having an outlet for it. Like I grew up, and appeasing was the mechanism that was modeled for me and that I followed, or numbing out. And so I didn't have a lot of access to my emotions. And I think when we don't acknowledge our emotions, it becomes hard to find your passion, hard to feel life. So that's, I feel like I'm somebody coming to life because I'm starting to let myself feel everything, and which isn't so fun all the time, but that's the juiciness of this life is to kind of be more present and in my presentness. And I'm starting to have experiences I never would have imagined. I just climbed a mountain in Peru, like a 16,500-foot mountain. I would never have imagined that. And I'm
That's
going back to Peru in
awesome.
March, and I've got all kinds of adventures lined up, and it's like I'm just getting started.
Was that like a 5-day trek or something like that?
Yes.
Or, right? That I've heard about?
Below freezing temperatures, in hail and thunder and lightning, and like
Oh my goodness.
beyond. It was the most
Yeah.
physically challenging thing I have ever done. Like my legs, like I needed some of your training and conditioning. My legs felt like noodles. I thought altitude. I didn't know about altitude. I mean, theoretically, I
it's
know
real.
about altitude, but
Yeah.
it's a totally for real thing.
Yeah.
And I remember the first day, the first hike, it was such an easy little light, nothing hike. And I was like panting and I couldn't catch my breath. And I really worried. I was like, there are only 9 of us. They're going to have to like airlift me off this mountain. Like I can't do this.
It'd be
they're
so embarrassing.
They're going to leave me and I'm going to be like, in a tent waiting till they come back down. And I just kept turning it over to prayer. I was like, okay, God, source, something, let's go. 'Cause I can't do this without you.
When was this?
This was in August.
Just this year?
This past August. Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's
It was
amazing.
thank you. It was a
Yeah.
really big thing.
Yeah. What would you say was your biggest takeaway from that experience?
There's so many, because just on a physical level, I went so far past anything I thought was possible for myself. It was so extraordinarily physically challenging. And then there were a lot of mystical teachings that I got that I had a conversation with a mountain. I'm going to go into it in my next talk. I'm not quite there yet, but I basically, like when I was at the very top and as sick as could be, I had this experience and I got all this guidance about the nature of life and, that there's love that's available for us all the time, every minute, and we're guided and supported. And I had a whole thing going on. It was really extraordinary. But probably one of my biggest takeaways is just, it's so empowering. Like I so respect what you do because I went past anything physically I ever thought was possible for myself. So now I'm like, what's next?
It's beautiful, right? Yeah. Like, start training with Esmey. No, I'm just kidding.
Training with Esmey, yeah.
No, truly. And I look at it as a tool. Fitness is a tool, but it's so right? It's like our meat and like, it's a fun way to tap into the greatness that we all have.
Right.
But it's just a tool. You don't have to do it, but it always blows my mind when people don't do it. And like you said, when you did that physicalness, I'm sure that you just felt, right, like deep, your power. And
yes. It was like, and it was funny. Michael Beckwith had told a story. We were at a minister's lunch like 7 years ago, and he'd just gotten back from China. He was training with the Shaolin monks. He was staying with them, and he was talking about how some of the older monks seemed to glide up this really steep hillside, and he was like huffing and puffing. He was like amazed at, and it was like their feet never touched the ground. And for some reason, 7 years after he told me that story, every morning when I set foot on the trail going up the mountain, I got this image of being like a Shaolin monk. So I'd be like going like this, even though I didn't feel that like grace-filled or comfortable, I just imagined it and somehow made it, I didn't have like the level of physical training that I should have had to go on a trek like that. I thought it was more of like a pretend mountain climb. I totally didn't get it was for real.
so you really, probably better for you, or else you might have not gone.
I never would have signed up if I'd really known what it was, like to that extent.
Yeah. With that in mind, what role do you think the mind plays in all of this?
It's huge. Everything is first born in thought. Thought plus emotion followed up with action is creative. So when we have a thought, everything is first born of thought. That's why it's so critical as an athlete in any area of life, whatever it is that we're doing, to begin to get a sense of what it is that you do want, to have some kind of like an idea that you can hang off of, and then charge it up with emotion. So for example, like if you want to go into a big athletic competition, you have an image of what you look like when you're winning. You know, when you're on the stand and you win and you've got the trophy and the whole thing, and you charge it with a lot of emotion. For anybody that's listening, you become aware of like, what is your goal for yourself? And then juice it with a ton of emotion. And then that becomes a magnet. It starts to magnetize towards you people, places, circumstances, and events that match you at your level of consciousness. One of the things, Dr. David Hawkins, he wrote Power versus Force, and he talked about how the different emotions we have, they vibrate at a different level. So when we're in fear, doubt, worry, envy, greed, we're vibrating at a lower frequency. This keeps us in our survival mind, which allows us to do little more than survive. But when you cause yourself to vibrate at a higher vibrational frequency, love, peace, joy, freedom, justice, truth, you're raising your frequency, and then you're beginning to magnetize towards you people at that vibrational frequency. And if this sounds freaky and just airy-fairy to people, science now finally understands that even though we seem so dense, like this all seems really concrete and material, down to our tiniest neuron, we are comprised of vibration and wave. All of this is vibration and wave. So if I learn to vibrate at a higher vibrational frequency, I will attract at that level. So people always come to me and they want more money, they want more prosperity. So you start doing things, taking actions, being of service, giving in a way that starts to let you vibrate at the level of what you want. You vibrate at the level of prosperity. You vibrate at the level of flow and generosity, and then that attracts more to you. So the answer to your question is everything first starts with thought. And it's a discipline. I consider myself a spiritual athlete. I treat my spiritual practice like an athlete. And some of that is the discipline of where I let my thoughts go. Because you'll attract at whatever level your thoughts are at, thought backed by emotion. So somebody can say, well, you know, I always think I want more money, but it has to be charged with enormous emotion. And the other little thing about that is what we go for ultimately has to serve the dignity of humanity. Ultimately, it has to serve life. So when you have your thought and you back it with a lot of emotion, and your purpose is something that's going to serve back to humanity, that's like a triple threat. That's what will really begin to draw to you people, places, circumstances, and events that are magnetized towards you to help you get through that purpose, to help you realize that purpose. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It almost like it's not just about you, and acknowledging the connectedness with, I've always thought, well, not always, it was actually an insight in my early adult life that when it clicked for me, and you said this earlier too, your dream's not just about you. You think my dream, my vision, what I want.
Right.
But your dream is connected to the well-being of so many more, thousands and more. And when you bring that into your awareness, it adds more of that energy charge that you're talking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's such a power in that in understanding we are not an island and we're connected to everything and everyone else.
What would you say to someone that says, okay, Julie, yeah, I hear you. I get it. I agree with you, but it's so hard. What would you say to them? What advice would you give them?
Baby steps. That's how I've gotten where I've gotten. It's baby steps. It's the discipline of an athlete, and it's baby steps. I'm not going for any huge, Herculean effort. I'm just waking up in the morning, and so for somebody that says it's that hard, I would start with, think of 5 things in the morning and at night that you're grateful for. We're starting to train the brain towards what you do desire as opposed to what you don't desire. On Sundays, I pray with people after services, and I pray, for hours over and over with people, and they all ask questions like that. And it starts by developing a discipline towards what you do want. We're all doing something already. Usually we're athletes training ourselves for what we don't want. Like, oh, it sucks. Oh, it's this hard. It's this challenging. It's this whatever. But if you keep focusing, not in an airy-fairy way or like ignoring what is, but you just decide to keep your eye on what is working, and you will start to attract more of like kind. it's very scientific. That's what I love, is that science is finally now catching up with what spiritual folks always kind of knew in their gut, that this is where we are. It's kind of like Einstein's science, though, because Einstein understood that spirit was back of everything. So we're going to attract at the level of our consciousness. And so for somebody that says, oh, it just never works out, or it's just so hard, take a baby step. Just whatever your goal is, break it down into the most micro steps and start building up little wins. Get a community around you. Community has been huge for me. I have the Agape International Spiritual Center, and we stream to over 190 countries and territories every Sunday. And so people can lean in there. So you can have a space that is inspirational. And for me, it's like been a training ground for me to practice being who I am. And so I would say, like, build a community as you're wanting to change things, build a community around you.
That's great advice. Yeah. So do you feel that in your life you had a wake-up call per se? And if so, what was it for you?
Yeah, I had a wake-up call. I think whatever it was that happened with me as a child, I don't even know how I got the picture of Dr. King, but that was a big moment for me. That was like a moment of seeing somebody that represented something that resonated deeply with me. And another big moment was I was living in New York City, and I just came out to visit LA. And I asked a bunch of friends that I know in New York, like, what do you do in LA? I'd never been there before. And several friends from different areas of my life said, oh, you should go check this Agape place out. And I walked in there and I saw Michael Beckwith up on stage, and I just cried, like from start to finish. And I think what happened for me was it's a couple of things. I saw somebody that was so free, like fully alive, fully awake. And it let me know that that's possible. I wasn't feeling very free in my life. I wasn't feeling very connected to my purpose at that point. And it showed me that it's possible. And I think it also was like a reflection of showing me what's possible for me. And I still at that moment, I didn't think like, oh, I could be on that stage, but it was like somewhere I think I did.
Yeah.
Somewhere I think like in the back of somewhere deep, I thought like, oh, that's the direction you're headed. Because it was so many years before I began speaking at Agape, but that was a really big moment for me. And then I think having him as a really dear mentor and teacher for me, it was like every step along the way, I started taking classes, I went through practitioner training, and he just kept like pushing me forward. I would be slow. I would be like, I always sat in the way, way back in the very last row on the edge so I could like get out really quick. And as I started taking classes, he would happen to walk in when I'd be giving a presentation. He kept seeing me. And then before I was even a minister, he started having me do speaking engagements. And so I think that like we all get angels in our lives. And so he's been a big angel for me. Like he's somebody that saw me and did something about it.
That's beautiful. What was the inspiration to move to LA for you?
You want to know something?
Yeah.
I wanted to be around the community more.
Agape?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. Well, that, and I was tired of being cold.
Yeah. New York is very cold.
I was in New York, and I remember I went to go to work. I was in this like exclusive health club. I was manager of a health club, and the wind literally blew me from one parked car to the next in the middle of a snowstorm to get to work. And I was like at 6 a.m. and I was like, done.
I'm done.
Done. And so it seemed like a great idea. I had no idea that I would go down this whole path. And so it's something that really just like flowed very naturally for me.
Interesting. I'm curious, what was the very first thing you remember you wanted to be?
I've always wanted to be a writer. In fact, I'm not doing nearly as much writing as I'd like to, but I have a writer's mind. And so I take notes all the time. And so I just have I have 3 books started right now, and I just have a very busy life right now, but I always saw myself as a writer.
And you did. You wrote
What's Your What? I have
and actually, can I
more.
see it right here? Yes.
Yes.
Just so anyone that is watching the video right now and not just the audio, this is What's Your What? How to Ignite Your Unique Brand. I'm going to actually put it right here, front and center. Now, for someone that wants to buy your book, what can they expect from your book?
So What's Your What is about, it's a lot of tools and exercises to figure out how do you pinpoint what is your passion? Like what lights you up? What's your thing? And then it's strategies on how to become self-inspiring and to get back on track when things go awry, which they will because it's life. And so there are a lot of exercises, there are a lot of tools. Some of it, there's one chapter called Mind Design, Design Your Mind. It's about how we use our thinking to create more of what it is we do want and less of what we don't want. And there's another chapter called Muse Yourself, how to dress your environment. Environment is huge. We have a emotional, physical, psychological, chemical response to everything in our environment all the time.
And we just don't know it.
And we don't know it. So it's happening whether you consciously dress your environment or whether it's just, the clutter on the floor, it's always impacting us. So I spend a lot of time talking about how to address our environment in a way that it charges us. And I can give an example of that. I had 3 weeks where I was driving from Santa Monica down to Irvine, which is a pretty long drive, morning and night, dawn to dusk. I was becoming a trainer of trainers in neuro-linguistic programming. And it was a time in my life when I felt really successful. Like I was doing it. I was great at what I was doing. And there was a beautiful, dreamy skyline that I would see in the morning at dawn, and I would see it at night at dusk as I was driving. So that particular color skyline became very charged for me. It's like when you listen to a song and it takes, you right back to the moment you first heard it and what you were doing, that kind of thing. So then it made sense for me to get an image of that skyline and keep it in my office because it reminds me of a time when I was really successful. It's a double anchor for me because growing up, we had a boat and we would go out on the water really early in the morning. So we'd be like racing across the ocean and the wind would be blowing my hair and I felt this kind of freedom. And it was the same dreamy skyline. So now I have freedom that I feel on the boat. I feel massive success when I was doing that drive back and forth from Santa Monica to Irvine. So I have success and freedom. And it's a triple anchor because when I was a child, I would do these astral travel experiences where I'd be flying around in the sky at night. And I felt all things possible.
Wow.
So by having images of that color skyline, wearing those kind of colors, it re-anchors for me those qualities. So I have a little excerpt in my book I'd love to read. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, I would love
It kind of addresses this. So it's from a chapter that talks exactly about that point. I have the good fortune of coaching several New York Times bestselling authors. With each one, we consider how they can create the most compelling work environment. So this goes for anybody, whether you're a writer or whatever your passion is, and whether it's your home environment or work environment, using colors, music, lighting, quotations, artwork, aroma. Consider every aspect of your environment, whether it's home or work. Keep a list of the top 3 adjectives or qualities that personify you. So that's when you go back and you ask people, like, what are the adjectives that most jazz you? I remember I got off stage once, this was a couple of years ago, and a minister came up to me and she said, "You're a spiritual badass." And I was like, oh, she cursed at me, but I liked it, And so I went and I taped it in my bathroom on my mirror because I was so proud of it. My son was horrified that I used a curse word, but
can I add too, when I was putting together the list of people that I wanted to interview, and I said, who are the most badass humans? And badass, and I think I texted that to you too.
Yes.
So it's interesting that came up, and when I thought of you as well, I thought badass.
And you know what I love about that?
That is so interesting.
I love the fact that probably 4 years ago, nobody would have ever used that term with me, even though I felt that way inside. Like we all have, like we all know who we really are, but I'm so polite and well-mannered, and like nobody really knew about the fire inside, and it's starting to come out. So
Yeah.
I'm hearing that a lot lately, and I like it.
Maybe you've given others permission to do it,
Yeah.
right? Whatever you've released,
Right.
now people feel like they could say it. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I'll take that. So I go on to say, have your statement of passion prominently displayed. So this is, I find really interesting. A lot of major corporations, Google, Deloitte, Microsoft, they've all shifted in their recruiting techniques. So it used to be like, give me your resume. Now, a lot of them, they could care less about resumes. They could care less about college. They want to know your statement of passion. That's become more common. So I would invite whoever's listening, and for myself too, like, what is my statement of passion now? Because it's evolving.
Yeah.
Like, what's your statement of passion? What lights you up? And then that's something that you could have prominently displayed. So it's always, fresh in your mind. Become sensitive to what sparks you. You have a biological chemical response to everything in your environment. Inspiration is about arousing specific emotions or actions. An effective environment ignites inspiration. When your environment is pleasing and conducive, it awakens your indwelling syntropic impulse and starts pushing the waters about. Just the right song or paragraph or artwork can get those waves rolling, and before you know it, you're surfing on a beautiful flow state, sailing in the zone. So you spoke about this recently. You were talking about being in the flow, and you were inviting people to consider what activities bring on a flow state for them. And I got so excited when I heard you saying that. There is a very famous psychologist. His name is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and I reference him just because it's a great name to say. But he wrote a book called Flow. And it talks about when you do those activities that create a state of flow, and usually we did them in our earliest years in one way or another. It could be drawing, it could be playing with dolls, it could be gardening, it could be going for walks in nature, it could be working out, whatever it is that creates a flow state, dancing, artwork. If you do it for like 5 minutes a day, I think you said, you do it, and it awakens your creativity. So whether it puts you in the direction of doing more of that particular thing, or it opens you up to what's wanting to emerge in your life right now.
Right.
Huge to purposefully create a state of flow, like on a really regular basis. And like you said, it can be 2 minutes dancing in your bedroom. Yeah.
Well, I love the word. It has, I feel like, purpose.
Yeah.
That you know what's happening, that right now you're tapping in to your depth, your soul, something that's just for fun. And I think a lot of the times we confuse like money with what we should do. Like if it doesn't bring us money, then we can't do it. And I think that's where we can get a little twisted. Right. But yeah, if you do, I loved that little piece in your book, by the way, and just you're emphasizing you have the power to make yourself feel good.
Yes. Yes, we do. We really do. And that's so huge to know. And it's part of being, like, I call it a spiritual athlete. It's part of the discipline. It's what I love so much about athletes is the discipline that it takes. And I respect that so much. And I work my life that way. And so it's very easy to be sloppy with our thoughts. It's very easy to be loose and sloppy with our intentions. But when you become more intentional, purposefully, more conscious, more present, that's when you really, I was going to say take the helm, but it's kind of you and God, nature, spirit, higher consciousness, whatever it is that you believe in that's greater than yourself, you become aligned with that power.
Yeah. And, you know, you've said flow a lot in the book Flow, and flowing with the cooking or flowing with the dance, you go in the flow. What does the flow mean to you?
So it's a state in which hours pass like minutes. It's when you could be doing something that's hard work, but it feels like play. It's when you are engaging your whole self. You become so enraptured in it that that work becomes play. That's the flow state, and it's usually something that allows the. So this is a little bit of psychology. So if you had 3 layers to your brain, you've got the conscious mind, which is everything you're aware of. People are listening. We're aware of cameras. We're aware of microphones. Then you've got the critical faculty, which is like the mid-band of the brain. That's all the judgments, all the assessments. Like, I wonder how I look. I wonder if this is a good angle. All the things that the mind is thinking. And then below that is the subconscious mind. That's like the control center for our entire being. So when I do a flow state, when I'm involved in something, whether it's practicing Tai Chi or walk in nature or painting or sculpting or dancing, when I'm doing something, it keeps my conscious mind busy enough. The mind that's like aware of everything becomes busy enough that it can relax enough that I can sink into the critical faculty, which is judging and assessing, but I can sink through that layer and I can go right into the subconscious mind, which is the control center for my entire being. This is where I get to sculpt my future. I get to paint the picture that I desire. This is where dreams come true. This is the fertile environment you plant your dreams into. And you do that because we're going to go back to science now, you're choosing to oscillate at the level of emotions that have a higher vibrational frequency so that you'll start to resonate at that same level. So I can go to a place of beauty if I'm doing a flow activity, of beauty, of love, of passion, of joy, of fierceness, of freedom, truth, justice, whatever it is. I start to match that level vibrationally. And again, this is science. It's not just like idealized talking. We now understand that we can vibrate at the level, we do vibrate at the level of our emotions. If we choose elevated emotions, we elevate our lives. That's exciting to me.
Yeah.
That's why I would imagine, excuse me, I got to shift.
Oh, sure.
It's been a minute. I imagine when you work out, you listen to music and that elevates everything. That probably puts you in such a state, right?
Yeah. It's one of my favorite things actually where without the music, it's a totally different world.
Right.
It's very interesting. What's something that what's a thought that's become a thing for you by your purposeful, intentional, deliberate, energy flow to it?
Yeah.
What's something that for you that was a thought, but you nourished and then it bloomed into physicality?
I have so many. I'm going to just take a minute. Well, definitely becoming a speaker and an author. That's something I used to say, but I wasn't, but I thought I'm a speaker and an author and I hadn't written anything and I wasn't doing book signings yet. And I've sold thousands of books and I've signed thousands of books and done all book signings all over the place. And that was first a thought. That was I don't know that it was so much a thought in the way of it was something I wanted and desired as it was something that I realized is my path. I think I recognized that, but it seemed a million miles away. And so I'm living that, I travel a ton and every once in a while I'll come home and I'll say wow, I'm a speaker and an author. I really am it. And that feels fun to me. Another thing that started as a thought, but again, I don't think these are goals. I think it's more recognizing something that's ready to emerge. A few months ago, Reverend Michael was at Agape and he talked about dreaming your outrageous dream. So I would invite anybody listening, what is your outrageous dream? Because for myself, I'm very safe. So I dream safe dreams that are 99% likely to come true with the least amount of effort or difficulty. And I won't embarrass myself. I'll dream those dreams. And when he's made that comment, what is your most outrageous dream? I had this voice inside of me for about 3 years now telling me what the next step was for me. And it's not possible. So I just kept putting it aside. That's ridiculous.
What was it?
I'm going to tell you,
Okay.
I think. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Okay.
I'm a little nervous about saying it. But I guess this is what, wake up naked?
Right. Get it all out. We want to see you naked, Julie.
Okay, let's see if I get naked. I'm not sure yet. So I started having this voice telling me what's supposed to happen next. And it wasn't possible, so I set it aside. And then there's something about Michael Beckwith up there on stage saying, dream your outrageous dream. And I was like, okay. And I began to respect it. It wasn't going away, so I began to respect it. And I didn't do anything per se about it. I just gave it my energy, my attention. I I think I shared it with one other person at the time.
Yeah.
And then what started happening in my life is people started approaching me that are doing it. This thing that I didn't think is possible, and it has to do with healing. And this thing that I didn't think was possible, I started meeting people. People started inviting me to be a part of their organizations and be around it more and more. And there is a level of healing and transformation that is happening that I am stepping into, and it's scares me, you know, like, because I don't know how far I can go with it, but it sure is. It's definitely something where I had a thought, or maybe I heard something, and then as I respected it and gave it space, the way is just unrolling right before me.
So would you say it's just as powerful? You don't have to believe that it's going to become possible, but just if you have this big dream, maybe the first step is to let it exist in your head and your heart. Because is it more like you stop pushing it away? Is that
100%? And also, if it's really like your most outrageous dream, it won't seem possible and you'll have no idea how you can do it. Because the two things about your most outrageous dream, there's no way you could do it yourself. Like, you're living a dream right now, but you have beautiful people helping us out with cameras and tech and all that stuff. Like, you can't do this by yourself, right? And so you can't do it alone, and you just and it's not completable in this lifetime. That's the other part. When you're really on your most outrageous dream, you'll never finish. Like, there won't ever be a point where you're like, did it, done, because it can keep going.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah. So you brought something that I actually had never thought about. Make your dream bigger than this lifetime.
Has to be. Has to be. There are a lot of examples of celebrities that they came in and they had, you know, their one dream. This is what they're going to do. When they reach that point, all of a sudden some accident happens. They're gone. There's so many examples of that have happened throughout history where people burn out like a flame. You know, I'm thinking of Elton John's song, Candle in the Wind. And there has to be, to have real longevity and to really be on your purpose. It's a dream that, you know, it's never ending. Like, you know, to inspire millions and millions of people throughout the world to live a healthier lifestyle. And maybe that even has a limit on it, because you could do that. So it's even bigger than that. And then you break it down so that doesn't become overwhelming. You break it down into really manageable bite-sized morsels so that every day you get a win.
Yeah. I think it's hard for a lot of people, and I think for a long time, myself included, to know what your purpose is. For someone that's listening right now that's just like, Julie, I'm completely lost. I have no idea what my purpose is. What's one piece of advice you can give to them?
Okay. That's what I do, a lot of exercises for that in What's Your What. So one of the things you can do is get all the cards, yearbooks, emails, things you've gotten where people acknowledge you, and write a list of all the adjectives that have ever been used to describe you. Yeah. You're going to see the same words come up over and over again, or synonyms. That's a clue. When there's an activity that creates a flow state for you, notice the quality that you feel while you're doing it. Like, I had a client once, and she loved basketball. Growing up in her young adult years, basketball was her thing. But she was an older woman now, and she was like, you know, I'm not playing basketball, and I feel like there's no joy in my life. And so I asked her, what's the quality? I call it quality of God. You can call it qualities of nature that you felt when you were playing basketball. Qualities of God, of life, are love, peace, joy, harmony, bliss, ecstasy, freedom, justice, integrity, truth. So you find out what are the qualities, and then ask yourself, what activities, what things can I do or surround myself with that ignite those qualities? That will help you find your passion. Light up your environment with the qualities that light you up.
So with that example with basketball, what does she say ignited in her?
So in her case, let's see if I can remember. She felt just pure joy. And so I said, I started by saying, you know, well, there are leagues. Like, you could join a league for your age group now. And she was like, no, I'm not going to play basketball anymore. And then I said, well, if you love the game, because for her, she just loved the game. I said, what about coaching? And she went, And then she like went out, and a couple weeks later she said, "You'll never believe this. I volunteer at the local Y.
Wow.
I'm coaching a young girls basketball team.
Wow.
I feel like I've gotten 20 years younger. I have my life back. Everything." And this is what I love. So all of these qualities, there's one dial on them. So if I am in a place of restriction, of holding tight, of staying safe, that level washes through every area of my life, through my finances, through my love, through my food, through everything. When I turn up the volume on joy, which is what she did, joy washes through every area of her life. So all of a sudden, she was dating again. She found somebody she really liked. All of a sudden, she was able to bring in money, not through basketball, but she'd gotten her flow back. Right? So there's one dial on all of these qualities. When you turn it up in one area, it washes through all areas of your life.
I love that because, we break things up, whether romance, spirituality, livelihood, money, right? And
Health,
health, right?
Of course.
But when your health improves, everything else will improve. In essence, that's what you're saying. When she brought more joy in her life, it brought joy to all of those aspects.
Yes, and that goes back to the science that she's vibrating at a higher frequency. So she's going to magnetize people, places, circumstances, and events that match her at this higher frequency. We draw to us wherever we're at.
I love that. I love that example. And I think whether it be basketball or whatever, I think our listeners will be able to translate that hopefully in a unique way to their life. Maybe they can't play basketball anymore. They're hurt or something happened, but they could do something connected.
Ask yourself, what is the quality that you appreciated about that activity? What's the quality that really jazzed you? And then what can you do in your life right now that would help to ignite that quality, to help bring that quality in?
I love that. Now, a question that I really love to learn about people is, what's a lie that you used to believe and that you don't anymore?
I used to believe that there's no need for me to do any of the things I do because there's so many other people doing them. Like why I don't need to be a speaker. There are tons of great speakers. I don't need to write. There are tons of great writers. That is definitely another lie. I got a lot of lies I used to tell myself, I guess. Another lie is that telling the truth isn't safe. I just grew up not really speaking my truth because it was just much easier to appease somebody or people please somebody and kind of get by. I know how to like tell people what they want to hear really well. And it just like makes things easier, it seems, but it kills the soul and it obstructs and distorts flow of energy. So that's something I used to tell myself is like, if I really am my full self, that's dangerous, or they'll leave, or, it'll be uncomfortable. And it is uncomfortable sometimes, but it's completely worth it.
Did you, once you started to be more honest with yourself and speak up for, the way that you wanted to, did you find that people... What was the reaction?
Flee?
Run
I know. Quickly away?
Did everyone leave you?
No.
Right?
So this is what I noticed. I find this really interesting. When I'm halfway in, halfway out of something, people feel very free to judge or critique. When I'm 100% committed to what I'm doing, people pretty much get on board. There are people in my family that were like horrified when they found out that I became a minister, even though it's trans-denominational. It's inclusive of all religions. It's just saying I'm very spiritual. And there were people that had a lot of judgments about it, but I noticed that they had judgments about it when I was still kind of uncomfortable with it.
Interesting.
And when I was keeping that area, I had my areas of life really compartmentalized. I was out in the corporate world and doing talks, but then the minister thing was like hidden over here. And then my spiritual thing was hidden over here, and everything was in a compartment. And as I started to just like 100% be me, first of all, I find that people that I don't think would be able to resonate with other areas of my life. Like I thought I was protecting them from feeling uncomfortable, but they all have their little like hidden secret things.
Yeah.
But there's nothing to push against anymore. When I'm comfortable with who I am, people are like, they get it and they don't push against it. Now, specifically, when I started speaking up more for myself, I briefed the people that I'm close with and said, I'm going to be doing a new thing here. And it's probably going to be a little awkward and clumsy.
Okay.
So, because I've been doing one thing for a long time and I'm going to be doing something else, I'm just going to really tell you how I feel. And I'm going to try and make it, as compassionate as possible, but I'm changing. So I gave people a heads up. And then it kind of became a little bit of a joke when it was really clumsy.
Yeah.
But
I like the idea of that, of prepping the people that you care about.
yeah,
Because
and
you don't have
getting
to
them
prep
on
the
board.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah, the world, you have your tribe. Some people are going to get you, focus on your tribe, I always say. And some people are not going to get you, and that's beautiful. Quickly, I want to share, I love to tease people about Abraham Hicks. Because I went on a cruise with Abraham Hicks. Do you know Abraham Hicks?
Yes.
She channels
Right.
Abraham Hicks. And people are like, oh, who is he? I'm like, oh, no, it's a woman that channels all these energies. And I don't know what this person believes, but I love fucking people. Yeah, she channels dead people. And they're just like, oh, have fun. And I just love seeing the difference. Because some people will be like, oh my God, tell me more. And other people are like, okay. And then they change the subject and nothing happens. We just go on having lunch.
Right.
And
maybe a seed of something gets planted. You never know.
Yeah.
Like the last couple of years I've been apprenticing with shaman. I've been just like doing my thing and I get the same response from some people. Some are like totally into it. When I went to Peru, what made me be able to climb that mountain is that I was apprenticing with shaman. So I was doing spiritual practices and going to ancient temples and doing all kinds of neat things. And some people are really interested in it and some aren't. But I think what matters is just speaking your truth and being yourself and who knows what that will light up for the next person.
Yeah.
Right?
I love that. We're concluding this interview because I know you have places to be, things to do. One final question.
Sure.
In a very brief way to honor your time. What do you think life is about? What's the meaning of life? Why are we here? I know that it's like
tell me
in
a
one
little
sentence.
light question in 10 seconds or less. I think we're here to grow and develop ourselves as much as is possible in our lifetime. I really, that's what it is for me. I'm here. This is a canvas. It's a playground. And I've treated it more like a life sentence than a life a lot of the times. And I'm starting to realize like, I am here to serve a life. I'm not here to serve a life sentence. I can get really stressed out and, wanting to get everything right. But this is the fun time. This is the playground. And so it's the time to stretch and grow and try new things and develop yourself as much as is possible.
Wow. I love that. The life sentence versus your life.
Serve a life.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Well, Julie, this has been such an honor.
My pleasure.
This has been so fun. I can't wait to share this interview with everyone I know and beyond. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you and to say, I know that we're getting to know each other, but I proud is one of my words. Like proud of people that I see. Proud that you're doing your thing. I'm so proud of watching. It's really great to know what's going on behind the scenes and how you came into your power and being more authentic. But when I saw you, I told you I had a girl crush and I thought you had you were always so together. And so to see that you didn't always have it all together, but you still went forward and no matter what, you didn't quit. And most importantly, you followed your gut. You followed that little whisper. And I think that's something to be acknowledged because not everyone is brave enough to do that. And so from my heart to yours, just a full acknowledgement. And thank you so much for gracing us with your presence today.
Woo-hoo, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you got as much out of that as I did. If you have not hit the subscribe button, make sure to go back and hit subscribe and keep coming back. Team, we're going to the top and I will see you there. I'm out.